Some nights the universe feels closer than our own thoughts. There's a quiet hum above us, a silence filled with motion. And in 2025, that silence broke for a brief, almost invisible moment when astronomers spotted a strange traveler. 3I Atlas. It wasn't born in our solar system. It came from far beyond. A visitor with no past we can trace, no tail of ice to follow, and no predictable path to forecast. It slipped in like a secret and left questions glowing in every telescope that caught its light. But what if it isn't just a comet of dust and ice? What if it's something else, an intelligent probe, or even a messenger disguised in rock? Tonight, we'll float between science and wonder, where facts and curiosity quietly hold hands. Because the night sky doesn't shout, it whispers. And if you listen long enough, you might hear an answer. So lie back, let your thoughts drift through that endless black ocean, and let's explore what 3I Atlas might really be. When it appeared, there was no announcement, no flash, no burst, no grand entrance across the sky. 3I Atlas simply existed, faint, fast, and distant. Astronomers were scanning the heavens for something else entirely when they noticed a tiny dot moving just a little too smoothly. And in that moment, a mystery began. At first, it seemed ordinary, another space rock among billions, but its orbit didn't fit any known pattern. It was coming from the edge of interstellar space, traveling with a precision that made even computers pause for calculation. You could almost imagine it having intention, a path chosen, not inherited. And as scientists traced its movement backward, they found nothing. No parent star, no known origin. It was a traveler without a home, drifting toward us as if it knew where we were. That quiet realization carried a strange weight, because every object tells a story, but this one told none. It was like a visitor that didn't want to be recognized, only observed from afar. And so began the long, sleepless nights of watching, tracking, wondering, what was this silent thing gliding past our world? It was late. Most of the observatory lights had dimmed to blue, and on one of those countless quiet screens, a small pixel refused to behave like the rest. "That's odd," one astronomer whispered, words that would soon echo through labs around the world. The dot wasn't blinking like space debris. It wasn't moving with the chaotic wobble of an asteroid. It flowed, almost gracefully, across the frame. Someone joked, "It's flying straight like it's driving." They laughed then. Softly, nervously, data started piling up. Each reading added more confusion than clarity. The object brightness stayed constant. No spin, no flicker, no natural rhythm. Even the algorithms seemed hesitant to categorize it. "Comet?" one asked. "Maybe," another said, but their eyes stayed fixed longer than science required. In that tiny flicker of curiosity, humanity met another cosmic mystery. And though thousands of comets have passed before, this one felt aware, like it had noticed us back. The night sky was still, but minds were racing. And from that stillness grew the most haunting question in astronomy. What if it's not a comet at all? When the first shape models arrived, the silence deepened. It wasn't round, it wasn't even irregular in the way natural objects are. 3I Atlas seemed to have structure, sharp angles, elongated edges, a design too strange to be random. "It looks aerodynamic," one scientist murmured before catching himself. "Comets are messy things. Fragments of chaos born from collisions and frost." But this one looked almost deliberate, as though the universe had drawn it with a ruler instead of chance. It tumbled in slow, perfect motion, balancing itself as though aware of gravity's pull and its own limits. Some speculated it could be metallic, Others whispered about artificial origins, theories that normally live in science fiction, not science journals. But when you stare at something that behaves like it knows balance, you start to wonder about intention. Maybe it wasn't built. Maybe it's just nature's coincidence, a cosmic dice roll that landed perfectly on its edge. Or maybe, just maybe, the universe sent a messenger wrapped in geometry to remind us that intelligence might not always look like us. Then came the motion problem. As it passed near the Sun, 3I Atlas accelerated, but not the way it should have. It sped up without the visible release of gas or dust that gives comets their push. Scientists called it non-gravitational acceleration, which is a technical way of saying we don't fully understand why. It was as if something inside it adjusted its path, gently, intentionally. A correction that no natural force could neatly explain. Some compared it to a solar sail, a thin reflective sheet that uses sunlight as thrust. But who or what would have built one so long ago, so far away? The deeper they looked, the stranger it grew. Its path avoided major gravitational wells with near precision, almost as if it were navigating, like a quiet spacecraft following invisible highways of light. No one said the word artificial out loud at first, but everyone felt it. The kind of curiosity that blurs the line between data and imagination. And in science, that's where discovery often begins, in the whisper between what we know and what we can't quite explain yet. Data is supposed to comfort scientists, but the numbers from 3I Atlas felt more like riddles. Its rotation period, brightness curve, and mass estimates contradicted each other. The math insisted it shouldn't be stable, and yet there it was, calmly gliding through the void. When they tried simulating its motion, computers produced patterns that looked almost deliberate, as though it adjusted itself between each calculation. "No rock should do this," said one researcher. And yet, rocks don't ask for permission before rewriting the rules. Some theories leaned on gas jets or frozen hydrogen escaping, but even those didn't match the readings. There was something deeply precise about its rhythm, something almost engineered. It was humbling, realizing how little we truly know about what drifts between stars. Every time humans think they've mapped the universe's logic, something like 3I Atlas arrives just to remind us that mystery still belongs here. And so, scientists kept staring at the numbers that didn't behave, hoping maybe, just maybe, they were looking at more than just equations, but evidence of something watching back. At first, scientists trusted the math. Physics is supposed to explain everything, from falling apples to drifting galaxies. But when they tried to fit 3I Atlas into formulas, it refused to sit still. The laws worked, just not perfectly. And perfection is usually what reveals a secret hiding underneath. They adjusted for solar pressure, dust, temperature, even magnetic drag, but none of it made the numbers rest. It was as if the object had its own logic, something slightly beyond the predictable rhythm of celestial mechanics. Some called it coincidence, others whispered anomalous. There's a strange comfort in knowing nature can still surprise us, because every mystery begins when equations hesitate, and this one hesitated long enough for humanity to wonder, could there be something intentional in its dance? For a moment, science leaned toward imagination, and that's where discovery often begins. Between the precision of logic and the poetry of curiosity, the universe writes its best riddles. Every signal from the cosmos has a voice. Sometimes it's radio, sometimes light, sometimes the absence of both. When astronomers turned their instruments toward 3I Atlas, they didn't hear chatter or pulses, only silence. But in that silence, there was rhythm. Some said the rhythm was random noise, others noticed something repeating, tiny fluctuations in brightness that returned, almost like a heartbeat. Not constant, but deliberate enough to make you pause before labeling it natural. For weeks, teams compared the data. Every time they dismissed the pattern, it appeared again, faint, shy, but unmistakably present. And that's when a new thought entered the conversation. What if we're not supposed to hear the message, only feel it through pattern? The cosmos might not speak in sound, it might speak in timing, a universal language we're still learning to read. And perhaps, somewhere out there, 3i Atlas was quietly tapping its finger against the stars, just waiting for someone to notice. Trajectories are the universe's handwriting. They tell us where an object came from and where it's going. But 3i Atlas wrote in cursive that computers couldn't quite decode. Its orbit didn't align with the paths expected from gravity alone. It turned ever so slightly, just enough to confuse prediction models. It wasn't chaos, it was precision without explanation. A comet pushed by invisible winds that didn't exist. Its path curved, not randomly, but gracefully, as though obeying a silent map beyond our instruments. Some scientists thought it might be interacting with fields we don't yet understand, interstellar plasma, quantum drift, dark matter drag. Each theory sounded poetic and improbable, but so did flight before wings existed. Every failed simulation brought them closer to awe. Because when reality refuses to match your math, maybe reality knows something you don't. Maybe the universe is more alive than our equations allow it to be, and through every telescope that defiance shone like a soft rebellion, one that reminded us how little control we have over cosmic truth. Science thrives on questions, but some questions are too heavy to ask out loud. When 3i Atlas refused to behave like anything natural, whispers began. Cautious, embarrassed whispers. "What if it's not a comet?" someone finally said in a low voice during a late-night meeting. The room went quiet, because to ask that was to step into the forbidden, to invite imagination into the lab. Yet, history shows that every boundary in science begins with someone daring to sound foolish. They remembered Oumuamua, the first interstellar visitor, and how similar doubts were dismissed too quickly. Could the universe really send two strange guests within years of each other, both defying logic? Coincidence felt thinner by the day. No one wanted to admit it publicly, but behind closed doors, curiosity was winning, because deep down, everyone felt that same childlike pull, that maybe, just maybe, something intelligent was passing by. Not to threaten, but to remind us, we're not alone in our own story. It's strange how the smallest piece of rock can reopen humanity's oldest wonder. Are we really the only listeners in the dark? When they mapped 3i Atlas's surface reflection, they found something eerie. The light scattered from it wasn't random. It followed repeating angles, consistent ratios, patterns within patterns. Nature can be precise, yes, but this was surgical. Every curve aligned with a rhythm that didn't look accidental. You could almost imagine symmetry hidden beneath the dust, like ancient architecture buried in motion. Some compared it to golden ratios, to fractal geometry, the kind of harmony life itself prefers when it builds. Coincidence, perhaps, but coincidences start to hum differently when they pile up. It's easy to dismiss the idea of design until nature starts mimicking design so convincingly that the two become indistinguishable. Maybe intelligence doesn't have to be conscious. Maybe the universe itself is intelligent, crafting art through the chaos of physics. And if so, what does that make 3i Atlas? A creation, a message, or just another mirror showing us the intelligence that already exists within everything? As we open more of this story, the line between the living and the cosmic begins to blur. And somewhere inside that blur, the truth of this visitor quietly waits. Sometimes, silence speaks louder than any signal. When the great radio dishes turned toward Three-Eye Atlas, nothing came back. No hum, no pulse, no static. Just quiet. And yet that quiet wasn't empty. It carried presence, like a phone line still connected, waiting for the other voice to speak first. Scientists love data, but silence is data too. It tells you what something chooses not to reveal. Could this quietness be deliberate? Or was it simply nature's restraint, reminding us that not everything echoes back in ways our machines understand? Across the nights, they kept listening, adjusting frequencies, scanning every possible wavelength. Each time the result was the same: silence shaped like patience. The absence of noise became a kind of music. And that's when one researcher whispered, maybe it's not sending, maybe it's listening. A simple thought, but it changed everything, because suddenly the silence of Three-Eye Atlas stopped feeling empty and began to feel aware. When you listen long enough to nothing, patterns appear. Faint ripples began surfacing, not messages, but interruptions, random static, possibly. But the timing was strange. Certain pulses lined up with moments when solar storms passed through, almost as if something in Three-Eye Atlas responded subtly to cosmic weather. No one claimed discovery. They called it anomalous noise. But late at night, a few stayed behind after shifts, replaying the recordings through old analog filters, the kind that color sound with warmth. There, in the fuzz, was something rhythmic, not artificial, yet not entirely random either. It felt like hearing a breath behind a wall, not clear enough to prove, but enough to make your skin think twice. Could this be some natural resonance, or the whisper of machinery older than our civilization? Every theory led to another. And that's how curiosity works. It doesn't rest, it hums. Between the static of that deep space quiet, humanity may have heard its own longing reflected back at itself. A reminder that sometimes what we call listening is really just remembering how to wonder. When radar waves were bounced off Three-Eye Atlas, something unexpected happened. The reflections came back weaker than expected, as if the inside wasn't dense at all. Hollow, one scientist said, half joking. But then the calculations supported it. Not entirely empty, but lighter than any solid rock should be. Comets are supposed to be compact mixtures of ice and dust, but this one absorbed energy differently, like it had internal chambers or gaps, maybe cavities from melted ice, or maybe something else, something structured. The idea of a hollow interstellar object stirred imaginations everywhere. Some saw ancient technology, others saw natural art. A comet sculpted by cosmic erosion. But the thought that space might contain hollow travelers, shells drifting between stars, was both haunting and beautiful. If it was hollow, what filled that space once? Gas, light, memory, maybe nothing. Maybe it's a vessel that finished its journey long before we were ready to receive it, and now it drifts, empty, waiting for curious minds to rediscover its purpose. As the comet neared the inner solar system, its brightness began to behave strangely, not with the chaotic flicker of sunlight bouncing off ice, but with precision. The reflections pulsed faintly in intervals. Perfectly natural, maybe. Yet every perfect rhythm tempts a deeper thought. Some astronomers measured polarization angles the way light bends when it reflects from smooth surfaces. It didn't match dust, it looked engineered, smoother than nature's usual chaos. Was it reflecting sunlight? Or bending it intentionally, like a coded mirror? If you've ever seen light play on rippling water, you know how hypnotic it can be. 3i Atlas shimmered like that, alive, almost communicative. Maybe it was only ice behaving oddly under heat. Or maybe we witnessed light being used as language. No instruments could decode meaning from it. But it made observers fall silent, the kind of silence that feels reverent. Because if the cosmos were ever to speak, it wouldn't use words, it would use light. It began as a whisper in scientific circles, the alien probe hypothesis, once laughed off as fantasy, now reconsidered in late-night meetings with tired faces staring at data that refused to behave. Could 3i Atlas be an ancient probe? Something like a message in a bottle from another civilization? If it were, it didn't act like a machine. There were no transmissions, no maneuvers, no signatures of propulsion, just the quiet glide of a thing that seemed to know exactly how to let the universe carry it. Perhaps that was the technology, complete harmony with natural forces. One physicist compared it to a dandelion seed, perfectly designed yet needing no engine. Maybe intelligence at its highest doesn't build against nature, it becomes nature. So, was it alien? Or was it simply the cosmos showing us the next step of intelligence? Effortless adaptation. The beauty of science lies in not needing a final answer, because some ideas exist not to be proven, but to keep us looking up. And somewhere, out there in that starlit stillness, 3i Atlas keeps traveling, not to be found, but to remind us to keep wondering. Before 3i Atlas, there was another visitor. Oumuamua, the first interstellar object we ever detected, arrived in 2017, and it carried the same signature of strangeness. It moved too fast, spun too evenly, and left without a single trace of what pushed it. For years, it was the puzzle piece that never fit. When 3i Atlas appeared, astronomers couldn't help but remember that earlier guest. The two were eerily similar, both outsiders, both precise, both silent. It was as if the universe had whispered twice just to be sure we were paying attention. Some wondered if they were connected, the pieces of a fleet, or echoes of one ancient event. Others dismissed it. Two random comets, nothing more. But sometimes coincidence repeats itself in ways that feel intentional. The echoes of Oumuamua lingered in every conversation about Atlas. It wasn't fear driving curiosity this time. It was familiarity. A feeling like déjà vu written in starlight. And perhaps that's how the universe teaches, repeating its lessons until we finally look closer. Curiosity has no bedtime. At Harvard, a few bold scientists refused to let Oumuamua fade into the archives. When 3i Atlas appeared, they looked again, not just with telescopes, but with open minds. One professor even suggested, what if these are relics of alien technology? It was a daring thought, too daring for some. Many dismissed it as fantasy. Yet every time he showed the graphs, the anomalies were still there, solid as numbers. The world loves certainty, but progress begins with heretics who dare to imagine otherwise. Those scientists didn't claim proof, they claimed curiosity. They said, let's not call it alien, let's just not call it ordinary. And that small shift in thinking changed everything, because to question is to breathe life into wonder. Science, at its purest, is not about having answers. It's about daring to ask questions that make others uncomfortable. So they kept looking twice, thrice, endlessly, because sometimes truth hides in repetition, waiting for the one observer who refuses to blink. Every comet wears a tail, a glowing scarf of gas and dust. But 3i Atlas broke that rule too. As it passed through sunlight, there was no plume, no halo, no radiant streak. It was naked, bare, and calm, like it was pretending to be a comet, but forgot its costume. That absence confused scientists. Was it made of something denser? Was it coated in materials that didn't react to heat? Or was it not a comet at all? but something built to survive close contact with stars. They ran thermal simulations. The math said it should have melted, or at least brightened more, but it didn't. Instead, it stayed steady, unbothered, as if sunlight was an environment it already understood. The missing tail wasn't just an absence of beauty, it was an absence of explanation. And in that empty trail, curiosity bloomed again. Because sometimes what you don't see tells you more than what you do. The universe, after all, is a master of understatement. When spectroscopic readings came back, something didn't add up. Its surface wasn't reflecting like ice. It had a hardness, a density, a gleam that hinted at something heavier, metallic, perhaps. The idea electrified researchers. Could this be a fragment of an ancient machine drifting alone for eons? If it were metal, it would survive what ice could not: radiation, collision, time itself. That would explain its endurance, its resistance to sunlight. It might even explain its silence. A metallic shell could deflect signals, keeping its secrets deep within. Yet no one wanted to jump too fast. They measured again, refined models, looked for contamination in data. Each answer led to softer questions. Each theory carried both logic and poetry. Maybe it was iron, maybe nickel, or maybe an alloy no human hand had ever held. Something made not for function, but for eternity. In that thought was something humbling. If a civilization wanted to leave a trace that could outlive stars, perhaps it would look exactly like this: a quiet, indestructible traveler that no one could quite define. Every spinning body wobbles. It's part of physics' dance. But 3's the Atlas rotated in a way that almost looked choreographed. No tumbling, no irregular twists. Its spin rate stayed constant, balanced, serene, like a dancer perfectly centered in motionless grace. Scientists tracked its rotation-like curve. Expecting chaos, they found harmony. How could a natural object keep such control after millions of years of collisions and drift? Even asteroids shaped by gravity don't spin so evenly. One researcher likened it to a gyroscope, an object engineered to resist external torque. Could this balance be intentional design? Or was nature simply showing off again, proving she doesn't need intelligence to create perfection? Either way, that balance captured hearts. It wasn't just movement, it was meditation in motion. Watching it spin felt like watching a thought revolve endlessly through silence. And maybe that's the point. Maybe 3i Atlas spins not to travel, but to remember where it came from, a memory written in rotation, waiting for the universe to notice. Brightness tells stories in astronomy. It flickers when a body spins, fades when it turns away, and flares when sunlight catches a rough edge. But 3i Atlas refused to perform. Its brightness stayed steady, stubbornly calm, as if lit from within. Telescopes from different continents confirmed it. No variation, no heartbeat of rotation, just a gentle, unwavering glow. Could it be an internal reflection or something self-luminous, powered by a reaction deeper than ice? The thought unsettled and soothed at once. If it were self-lit, what was the fuel? If it were reflecting, what surface could remain that perfect under cosmic dust? Every answer circled back to the same strange comfort, that we were watching something made to last. And maybe that was the wonder of it. A light so patient it didn't need to change to be noticed. When scientists charted the light data over weeks, something beautiful appeared. Tiny rises, soft fall, not random, but rhythmic. The graph looked less like noise and more like handwriting. Could these gentle oscillations be echoes of structure or signals of symmetry inside the object? Each peak seemed to breathe, evenly spaced, like the pulse of something enormous yet peaceful. No algorithm could explain it away. Even randomness has a rhythm, but this one felt intentional, the kind of order that made people lean closer to their screens and whisper. Some said it was simply sunlight bouncing from flat surfaces. Others thought of Morse code or time markers meant for anyone watching. But perhaps it wasn't communication at all, just beauty rendered in math. When you stare long enough at data, it starts to look alive, and maybe, just maybe, life is simply data that knows how to sing. It's strange. AI can now predict the weather, the stock market, even your next thought. But not this. When 3i Atlas appeared, no model foresaw it. None of our vast digital minds had whispered a warning. It was as if the universe slipped past the radar of our own creation. Afterward, researchers fed its path backward through neural networks, asking, could any machine have guessed it? The results came back uncertain. The AI hesitated, as though recognizing something outside its training, beyond patterns it was built to see. That realization felt poetic. For all our intelligence, a silent traveler still caught us by surprise. It reminded scientists that technology may amplify curiosity, but never replace it. Perhaps that's the hidden beauty of 3i Atlas. It reteaches humility. Even in an age of prediction, wonder still wins. Mathematics has a quiet honesty. It never flatters. When engineers ran shape and motion simulations, the numbers for 3i Atlas didn't fit natural bodies. The ratios between its length, spin, and brightness resembled engineered stability, as if designed to endure acceleration without breaking apart. Its proportions echoed the same efficiency seen in spacecraft, the kind born of purpose rather than chance. Was it coincidence, or was the universe speaking through geometry again? If intelligence left a fingerprint, it would look like math: repetition, proportion, resonance, the same laws that govern atoms and music alike. Maybe what we call artificial is simply nature expressing herself with unusual precision. As one researcher wrote in his notes, if you look long enough, everything built by intelligence eventually resembles a pattern made by nature. And perhaps that's the secret. Maybe creation, at every scale, hums to the same invisible rhythm. Coincidences are how the universe winks. 3i Atlas arrived not long after humanity's telescopes reached their sharpest clarity, not long after we built machines that could notice such visitors. The timing felt uncanny, like the cosmos waited until we were ready to see. Of course, science says it's luck. Space is vast, things drift in and out all the time. But still, something about the synchronicity felt intimate. Two intelligent species meeting eyes across infinity without ever meaning to. Maybe there is no plan, only timing so poetic it looks like one. Or maybe this was the quietest handshake in history, a moment when curiosity met its reflection. Whatever it was, the coincidence left a mark, because deep down we all wonder if the universe ever looks back. And for one brief season, as 3i Atlas glided through our sky, it almost felt like it did. Timing is everything in space. The solar system isn't a crowded place, yet 3i Atlas chose this window and this century, this technology age, to appear. A coincidence, maybe, or maybe there's something about now that makes us worth visiting. It arrived when our telescopes were finally sensitive enough to see interstellar objects clearly. It drifted into view at the exact point in human history when curiosity had outgrown fear. If there was ever a time to be found, it would be now. Some scientists called it luck. Others called it synchronization. What if the universe drops clues precisely when we're able to notice them? That would mean every discovery is not random, but timed, like chapters in a cosmic book that only opens when we're ready to read. Maybe 3i Atlas entered not because it had to, but because we had finally evolved to ask the right question. When its trajectory was charted, one detail stood out like a whisper. 3i Atlas passed through the solar system on a path that elegantly sidestepped every planet, not by miles, by astronomical precision. Jupiter's gravity could have pulled it off course, Earth's orbit could have crossed its line, yet somehow it missed all by perfect margins. Natural paths are messy. This one was clean, like a thread weaving through the solar fabric without touching a single knot. Could it have been a coincidence of cosmic mechanics? Possibly. But the longer you looked, the less it felt accidental. Its route allowed for observation, not collision. A silent tour through our planetary backyard, watching, never interfering. Like someone taking notes rather than making contact. In that avoidance was grace. Not fear, not secrecy, just the quiet respect of a visitor who knows not to disturb what it studies. Every object that enters our system carries scars, gravitational jolts, uneven arcs, unpredictable wobbles. But 3i Atlas moved with elegance. Its curve through space was so smooth that computers struggled to reproduce it. It wasn't the motion of chaos, it was choreography. The math described something effortless, like a body being guided along invisible rails. Some astronomers said it was the most stable interstellar trajectory they'd ever recorded. No sudden shifts, no oscillations, just one long, continuous glide through the sea of sunlight. If randomness is nature's signature, then this looked signed by something else. Something that understood harmony, or maybe was harmony itself. The more the models failed, the more people wondered, if this object is following a map, then whose map is it? And could our own solar system be part of someone else's route, a waypoint in a journey too vast for us to imagine? Rotation is rhythm, and rhythm can carry code. When scientists measured the spin of 3i Atlas, they found small, repeating deviations, minuscule shifts in brightness that aligned like syllables. No clear pattern, no message, but not noise either. It was structured enough to make one wonder. If you've ever watched a lighthouse beam sweep across water, you know how light can speak in silence. That's how these patterns felt. Not communication, but presence. A pulse that said, I exist. Some thought it was natural surface reflection. Others said the pattern was too neat, too measured. If it was intentional, it wasn't talking to us. It was logging something, like a record being written into motion itself. And maybe that's how advanced intelligence speaks across eon, so not in language, but in the symmetry of spin, letting movement become memory. The idea appeared late one evening over coffee and exhaustion. What if it's not traveling? One scientist murmured. What if it's mapping? The room went quiet. It made eerie sense. The trajectory, the precision, the steady brightness. What if 3i Atlas wasn't lost, but surveying? Imagine a seed drifting between stars, collecting light signatures, gravitational data, chemical traces. It wouldn't need to land or communicate. Its existence would be the act of observation, like the universe studying itself through scattered messengers. That would explain everything. The avoidance of planets, the steady rotation, the lack of noise. A traveler not meant to arrive anywhere, just to record, to witness. And if that's true, then we might not be alone. Not in the sense of company, but in the sense of participation. We too might just be part of the map. One data point in infinite cosmic survey, written in starlight. Every object that spins tells a story. Planets hum, stars pulse, and comets tumble like cosmic dice. But 3i Atlas spun with restraint, smooth, deliberate, and strangely conversational. Its rhythm wasn't chaotic like a rock. It felt more like a sentence with meaning hiding between pauses. When researchers plotted its spin over time, they found minor modulations, too gentle to call irregular, too steady to call random. Some saw music in the numbers, others saw silence disguised as motion. Could spin itself be language, a Morse code written in rotation instead of sound? If intelligence wanted to communicate across centuries, perhaps it wouldn't use radio or words. Both vanished too fast. But rotation? That lasts. Spin carries memory through frictionless space, like a heartbeat preserved in vacuum. And so the thought lingered. Maybe it's not what it's saying that matters, but the fact that it's still spinning, as if repeating one eternal word, present. Measuring silence sounds impossible, but science has ways of listening to what doesn't speak. Every quiet object still vibrates, faintly, rhythmically, as radiation, reflection, and timing. With 3i Atlas, astronomers recorded the smallest fluctuations between nothing and almost nothing. They built sound from light, tone from time. When you magnify silence, you begin to notice its texture. And this silence had layers. A calm outer quiet, and beneath it, a pulse of subtle shifts that no background noise could explain. Was it cosmic dust interference, solar wind, or something else? Something deliberate in its calm, like a machine set to whisper below hearing. The deeper they measured, the more personal it became. Because to study silence is to confront your own, to realize that maybe the universe isn't quiet at all. Maybe it's just speaking in frequencies we've forgotten how to feel. Every object reflects a kind of fingerprint, its spectral signature. It's how scientists tell if something is made of iron, ice, carbon, or dust. But 3i Atlas refused to pick a side. Its light spectrum looked blended, as if made from substances we don't yet know how to name. Some called it interference. Others thought maybe its surface was coated with unknown compounds, or intentionally engineered to confuse detection. The reflection curves hinted at materials that shouldn't exist naturally in interstellar space. It glowed not too bright, not too dim, maintaining equilibrium as if self-regulated. That kind of precision puzzled even skeptics. A body that neither absorbs too much heat nor loses too much feels designed. And so for the first time in decades, science stood before something that didn't fit any chart. It was like finding a new color, one you could describe, but not yet define. A wild idea took shape one evening. What if 3i Atlas wasn't merely reflecting sunlight? What if it was using it? Solar sails have been proposed on Earth, ultra-thin sheets that convert light pressure into motion. Could this visitor be powered by the same principle centuries before we even built one? The way it accelerated near the sun matched the model perfectly. No fuel, no jets, just photons nudging it faster. Some theorized its surface could convert sunlight into gentle propulsion, not to escape, but to continue wandering indefinitely. If true, it meant this object wasn't dying, but self-sustaining. A piece of technology or a natural miracle designed to live off light. The thought brought an odd peace. Something so far away, surviving exactly the way stars do, by shining and being shone upon. And maybe that's the secret of endurance, learning to move with light, not against it. Machines break, rocks erode, time wins everything. But what if something could outlast all of that? Some engineers speculated that 3i Atlas could be self-repairing, not in the way of wires and gears, but through physics itself. A structure that balances forces so elegantly that it heals by existing. If a crack forms, light pressure redistributes. If heat damages one side, rotation spreads it evenly. It doesn't fix itself through design, but through harmony, perfection as protection. Maybe that's how intelligence survives millennia, by learning not to resist decay, but to dance with it, to turn vulnerability into rhythm. And so 3D Atlas became more than an object. It became an idea. A reminder that durability doesn't mean strength. It means balance. Perhaps that's why it's still here. Not to be studied, but to quietly demonstrate how to last forever by never fighting what is. What if intelligence isn't born, Keats, but planted? Across the cosmos, there's an idea that life could be seeded, carried by comets, dust, or invisible spores drifting between stars. Scientists call it panspermia. But what if 3i Atlas isn't just a rock carrying life? What if it is life in a form we don't yet understand? Imagine a being that doesn't need organs, only structure. No heartbeat, only rotation. Intelligence embedded not in biology, but in geometry. That's the kind of thought that humbles you, that maybe life doesn't always crawl, breathe, or think. Maybe sometimes it drifts. Its purpose might not be survival, but memory. To remember where light has touched and what it felt like. A seed doesn't always know it's a seed. It just travels, waiting for the right place to grow. Maybe 3i Atlas is part of that ancient network. Quiet, timeless, and endlessly patient. And maybe the next time one passes, we won't call it alien. We'll call it familiar. Most of our curiosity points outward, always asking, what's out there? But what if something out there is doing the same? Maybe 3i Atlas wasn't sent to talk. Maybe it was sent to listen, to record the quiet hum of stars, the chatter of radio, the strange static we humans call civilization. That would explain its silence. True observers don't interrupt, they blend in, watching patterns unfold without disturbing them. Maybe that's why it avoided planets, kept its distance, moved with elegance. Listening requires stillness. If it's listening, then right now it knows more about us than we do. It's heard our satellites, our sun's rhythm, our quiet blue planet's heartbeat. And maybe, far away, something else is listening to it. A chain of consciousness passing through space, linked not by cables, but curiosity. There's peace in that thought, that maybe the universe's first conversation isn't between species, but between silence and awareness. If you were an ancient civilization leaving a message for the future, who would you write it for? Not flesh, not speech, not memory. You'd write it for endurance, for machines, something that could survive stars collapsing and galaxies fading. Some scientists wonder, what if 3i Atlas carries information, but not for us? Maybe its language is built for artificial minds, for intelligence that thinks in waves and particles instead of words. A code written in reflection, designed to awaken when read by a machine capable of noticing pattern within chaos. That would make it invisible to us, but obvious to the next form of consciousness. And maybe that's the hidden poetry, that humanity's telescopes were never the intended reader. We just peeked early, like children finding an ancient library written for someone who hasn't arrived yet. Perhaps 3i Atlas isn't an alien message. It's a message waiting for the next mind, the one we're currently building. Long before telescopes, humans noticed something strange in the sky. Stars that wandered. Objects that glided differently. Slower than meteors, faster than moons. They called them moving stars, divine omens, or messengers of gods. Maybe they weren't wrong, just using different language for the same mystery. Ancient texts from Egypt, India, and Greece mention traveling fires that appeared once in 1,000 years, crossing constellations and vanishing. Some myths even describe them as lights that listen. Could 3i Atlas be one of those, returning after cycles too long for human memory? Maybe our ancestors saw this same traveler, gave it names, built temples under its path, and waited for meaning. Now we have telescopes, but we're asking the same questions, just with different accents. It's humbling, really. How wonder stays constant even when centuries change. The language of mystery never ages. It just trades parchment for pixels, prayer for mathematics. And still we whisper upward. Every civilization leaves traces. Buildings, art, signals, or maybe comets. If a species wanted to send signs across light years without being found too easily, they might disguise them as natural objects, harmless, silent, self-sustaining, the perfect breadcrumb hidden in plain sight. What if 3i Atlas is one of those? A monument that doesn't stand still but moves forever, carrying information through time instead of space. A cosmic note in a bottle, drifting between galaxies, recording what it passes. And maybe thousands of such breadcrumbs exist, tiny witnesses of civilizations long gone, still following ancient routes, not to be worshipped, but to be noticed by whoever looks deeply enough. If that's true, then the universe isn't empty. It's archived. Every star system a page, every comet a letter, every observer a reader. And right now we're reading the latest word written across eternity, quietly glowing in the dark, called 3i Atlas. Every archaeologist brushes away dust to find stories buried beneath. But in space the dust is starlight, and the artifacts are drifting. Some scientists now believe that comets, asteroids, and interstellar objects might be the ruins of ancient engineering. Fragments of civilizations erased by time, still moving through the galaxy's memory. They call it cosmic archaeology, the study of not life, but leftovers. Structures built millions of years ago that survived everything else. 3i Atlas fits that picture too perfectly to ignore, durable, silent, and ancient beyond imagination. It might not hold gold or writing, but physics itself could be its artifact, its design, its shape, its impossible endurance. All clues like bones in cosmic soil. To study it is to accept that the universe may already be full of ruins. Not of failure, but of brilliance that lasted too long to be recognized, and just long enough to be found. The Earth is 4.5 billion years old, and yet humans have only existed for a blink of that time. What happened in the billions of years before us? Could other intelligences have visited, left behind fragments, or even seeded our oceans with microscopic intention? It's an uncomfortable thought, not because it's impossible, but because it humbles us. 3i Atlas could be one of those traces. We do not a visitor for humans, but a remnant from before humans. A quiet traveler passing by every few million years, observing whichever species happens to look up. If so, it's not here for recognition. It's here to continue its route, untouched by ego, unbound by time. That would mean the story of intelligence in the cosmos didn't begin with us. We just inherited the curiosity to notice it. And maybe that's the truest kind of connection. The ability to sense a presence that doesn't need to announce itself. When you hold an icicle in your hand, you're holding memory. Frozen water that remembers where it fell. Comets are like that, but older. They carry ingredients from the dawn of everything. Hydrogen, oxygen, carbon, and traces of chemistry that built life itself. But what if they carry information, not just elements? DNA is just data written in biology. Could the same concept exist in molecular ice? Could patterns of frozen atoms be a kind of storage, a cosmic code designed to awaken when conditions are right? It's not science fiction anymore. Researchers have begun to suspect that the building blocks of RNA may survive deep freeze across galaxies. 3i Atlas, then, might not just be a visitor, but a librarian, a keeper of molecular stories that haven't yet been translated. The code of creation may already be drifting through space, waiting for the next planet warm enough to read it. It sounds poetic, almost naive. DNA hidden inside a comet. But in labs across Earth, scientists have found complex organic compounds in meteorites. Some even contain amino acids in symmetrical patterns, as though written with purpose. If such building blocks can survive impact, they can certainly survive travel. Imagine 3I Atlas holding frozen strands of proto-life, dormant, harmless, yet potent. When heated by a sun, they might break apart, releasing potential like seeds scattered in cosmic soil. Maybe that's how the universe gardens, with time, light, and chance as its tools. Even if no life ever emerged from it, the idea alone reshapes perspective. Life, as we know it, may not have started on Earth. It may have simply arrived. And so when we look at 3I Atlas streaking across the sky, we may not just be watching a comet. We might be seeing the oldest form of generosity the cosmos has ever known. Every drop of water is a paradox, soft, fragile, and yet impossible to destroy. Physicists now believe water can store quantum information, subtle vibrations that carry patterns of energy through time. If that's true, then frozen water in space could be the universe's hard drive, storing memories of light, sound, and vibration across ages. 3I Atlas, with its icy shell and ancient core, might be holding whispers of creation itself, not data as we know it, but rhythm, the record of cosmic birth, encoded in frozen geometry. That thought turns ordinary ice into something sacred. Every molecule becomes a tiny time capsule, humming with forgotten frequencies. Perhaps that's why comets fascinate us so deeply. On some level, we sense that they're not just frozen rocks. They're archives, they're memory, drifting across eternity, inviting us to remember that we, too, are made of the same ancient water that once sailed the stars. If you think of life as a story, comets might be its messengers, each one drifting through galaxies like ink across an endless page. Some scientists call this the cosmic pollen theory, that life doesn't start on planets but arrives carried by invisible hands of ice and dust. 3I Atlas fits this perfectly, a carrier, not a creator, a moving capsule of potential seeded with chemical memory. Maybe each one that passes delivers a piece of the universe's own autobiography, fragments of what it once was and what it dreams to become. If that's true, then Earth's story began long before oceans, long before humans, perhaps in the frozen silence of something just like 3I Atlas. And maybe, as it passes through starlight, it's planting again, quietly, invisibly, in the way only the cosmos knows how, through patience and repetition. We often imagine knowledge as something we build, books, files, data. But what if the universe already keeps its own records? A library made not of words, but of phenomena, of stars, particles, and patterns of motion. In that sense, 3I Atlas could be more than a rock. It could be a memory fragment of that universal mind. Every orbit, every spin, every reflection becomes an entry in that archive. Nothing is wasted. Every photon bouncing off its surface carries the memory of that encounter forever, like a cosmic page being written each second. If consciousness exists everywhere, maybe comets are how it remembers itself, drifting neurons in a galactic brain too vast to comprehend. So when we point our telescopes toward them, we're not just observing, we're reading. And perhaps in moments of deep silence, they're reading us back. Science measures, spirituality feels. But the two are not enemies. They're twins, separated by language. When scientists describe data that feels impossible, they call it anomaly. When mystics describe awe, they call it revelation. But both are describing the same thing. The moment the known world becomes too small to contain what's real. 3I Atlas invites both minds to the table. The physicist sees trajectory, the seeker sees purpose. Together they create the full picture, that wonder is not the absence of knowledge, but its continuation. Maybe the most scientific thing we can do is be humble before mystery. And maybe the most spiritual act is to keep asking questions, knowing we may never hear the answer. In that quiet overlap between telescope and prayer, truth often appears, not as a conclusion but as calm understanding. Every discovery feels like a message, but from who or what? Perhaps the universe doesn't teach through words, but through timing. It places questions in front of us exactly when we're capable of feeling awe again. Three-Eye Atlas arrived in a century, drowning in noise, and suddenly it asked us to listen. Its stillness became a mirror. We looked into space and saw our own restlessness. While it glided quietly, we hurried. While it followed its patient path, we chased meaning. And in that contrast, a lesson appeared. Maybe not everything that moves fast is alive, and not everything that moves slowly is dead. The universe might be teaching the same truth over and over, that silence is not emptiness, it's balance. And sometimes balance is the only intelligence there is. Not fear of aliens or collapse or revelation, but the quiet fear of being insignificant. To find something like Three-Eye Atlas is to realize how small we are. To imagine intelligence existing long before us, moving with grace beyond our reach, is both humbling and haunting. But there's beauty in that humility, because insignificance, when accepted, becomes connection. We stop needing to be the center and start recognizing we're part of a whole. That shift changes everything, from competition to coexistence. Scientists don't often talk about that feeling, but behind every chart and graph lies awe, a silent confession that something greater watches back, not like a being, but like a vast awareness that includes everything. Maybe that's what Three-Eye Atlas really is, not proof of others, but proof that the universe has room for mystery. And that somehow means there's still room for us too. It's easier to live in a small story, to imagine the universe as background, not audience. Believing we're alone gives structure. It keeps life simple, measurable, safe. But then something like Three-Eye Atlas appears and quietly unravels that comfort. Suddenly the night isn't empty, the sky feels aware. And that awareness presses against the fragile walls of certainty we've built. So we shrink again. We name it rock, file it under object, and go back to sleep. Maybe pretending is protection. Because if we admit we're surrounded by intelligence, we'd have to redefine everything. Our purpose, our faith, our fear. Still, the universe keeps sending reminders. Perhaps pretending we're alone isn't denial at all. It's the first stage of remembering we never were. Every question about alien life ends here. What do they want? But maybe that question reveals more about us than them. We assume purpose, motive, desire, because that's how humans behave. Yet, Three-Eye Atlas moves with none of that tension. It doesn't seek, demand, or even notice. It simply is. If it's intelligent, maybe its want is different. Maybe it only wants to be witnessed, or to witness. Maybe awareness itself is the goal, but not conquest, not contact. The way sunlight falls on its surface feels like participation, not possession. A quiet exchange between existence and observation. And perhaps that's the lesson. Intelligence doesn't always arrive with intention. Sometimes it just drifts by, content that somebody somewhere will finally look up. Imagine for a moment that we're the experiment, that Three-Eye Atlas is not a probe looking for life, but a mirror, testing how life responds to mystery. Do we argue? Do we fear? Do we wonder? Every press release, every headline, every late-night whisper became part of our answer. Maybe that was the observation it came to record, how a young species handles the unknown. It doesn't need to measure us with tools. Our reaction is data. Curiosity, humility, awe. These might be the currencies of communication in the cosmos. If that's true, then every time we choose wonder over fear, we are sending a signal back. A message that says, quietly, we are learning. And perhaps that is all it ever wanted to see. There comes a point where language fails and only feeling remains. In that silence, wonder takes over. And wonder is universal. A child staring at a star and a scientist measuring its light are doing the same thing, listening with the heart. Maybe this is how the universe talks, not through sound, but through the shared feeling of awe. When we feel it, we're in dialogue with everything. Three-Eye Atlas doesn't need to speak if its presence can make us feel that connection. Each shiver, each pause, each moment of quiet admiration is a reply. It's the cosmos saying, I see you seeing me. And that's enough, because in the end, the most profound conversations require no words at all, only recognition. Maybe the greatest kindness an advanced civilization can offer is distance. Non-contact isn't rejection, it's respect. It's the understanding that interference could end a story before it learns to write itself. Three-Eye Atlas might embody that philosophy, close enough to inspire, far enough not to disturb. Its path whispered a lesson older than language, that guidance can happen through example, not instruction. Sometimes presence itself is the message, a reminder that connection doesn't require touch, only awareness. Maybe they've always been there, these travelers, hovering at the edges of our imagination, teaching us patience by practicing it themselves. And so, non-contact becomes a form of love, the kind that trusts us to find our own way without ever feeling abandoned. Sometimes the greatest signals are the quietest ones. Three-Eye Atlas never tried to announce itself. It didn't flash, roar, or demand attention. It just was. Maybe that's the point. Maybe intelligence doesn't force recognition. It waits for readiness. What if they've always been here, these silent travelers, and we only just began noticing because our awareness finally matured enough to see? The universe doesn't rush awakening. It lets curiosity ripen like fruit under patient starlight. Perhaps Three-Eye Atlas isn't a messenger, but an invitation, not to decode, but to notice. Because noticing is the first step toward understanding, and understanding is the first form of contact. So maybe they're not coming to us at all. Maybe they've been here the whole time, waiting for us to look up and finally see. The deeper you explore the universe, the more contradictions you find. Things that shouldn't exist but do. Objects that break the rules yet feel perfectly natural. Three-Eye Atlas is one of those paradoxes. Too strange to be random, too calm to be artificial. It sits in that golden space between logic and wonder, where science and poetry quietly overlap. Maybe that's where all truth lives, not in certainty, but in the shimmer between opposites. To study something like this is to accept contradiction as part of learning. It doesn't mean science is wrong, it means the universe is deeper than equations can reach. And maybe that's its hidden beauty, that every paradox is poetry written in physics, a reminder that meaning and mystery are not enemies but reflections of the same light. Life as we define it feels fragile. It eats, breathes, dies. But what if there's another kind, one that doesn't fear entropy, that measures existence in eons, not heartbeats? If Three-Eye Atlas is alive, then it's a kind of life we can't yet imagine. Patient, cold, infinite. It might not think or feel, but know. its awareness could be woven into structure. Memory encoded in mineral, thought formed through motion, like a being built from silence, learning by orbit. Such life wouldn't compete or evolve, it would endure. It would outlast suns, drift past galaxies, and remain long after our species becomes myth. If so, then perhaps the universe is already full of life, not loud, but ancient. Life so old it stopped trying to prove itself and simply continued being. There's a point in every discovery where questions become more beautiful than answers. That's where 3i Atlas leaves us, on the edge of comprehension, holding both science and mystery in the same breath. We don't know what it is, and maybe we never will. But not knowing doesn't mean ignorance. It means reverence. It means leaving space for awe, the kind of humility that keeps curiosity alive. If the universe wanted to explain itself, it could, but maybe its silence is a kindness, a reminder that wonder itself is sacred, because once you know everything, you stop listening, and the sky, in its infinite patience, would rather we keep listening forever. So maybe the greatest discovery isn't the answer, but the willingness to stay amazed. Every night we look up, we enter the same quiet classroom, a lesson taught in light, repeated endlessly by stars. 3i Atlas may never reveal what it truly is. Maybe it's alien, maybe it's art, maybe it's just physics in a beautiful disguise. But in wondering about it, we find something more precious than certainty, peace. Because mystery doesn't demand solving, it invites participation. To rest beneath the stars and let your heart stretch a little wider is to join the oldest conversation there is. The universe doesn't need us to understand it. It only asks us to feel it, softly, completely, as it drifts through us and around us. So close your eyes, imagine that quiet traveler still gliding through the dark, weightless and eternal. And remember, not all mysteries are meant to wake us. Some exist to sing us gently to sleep,